Hello, welcome. Today we're going to do more of a talk, a discussion about magic. And what is magic? How do I work magic? And what are my thoughts? Because there seems to be some different approaches to magic and spellcraft. One of the things that I find common in several books is the idea of getting into a magical mindset, um, or what sometimes people will say, uh, almost with every spell, cast a circle, right? Get into your sacred space. Um, and I agree with that. I tend to cast a circle by doing like a little bit of I make an orb and expand it. Some people draw a circle, some people use a wand, but whatever you do to sort of get into a sacred space. That could also be a physical space. Like, where do you perform your magic, right? Is it by your altar? Most likely. So you walk through your day to day life in the physical material world. You have a million things on your mind: your groceries, your job, your career. But then when it's time to perform magic, you want to shut all of that out. So you get into a magical mindset by going to your altar, your nice quiet spot, getting into a sacred space, calm, grounded, feel nothing but perfect love. But you can also do some other things, like you can incorporate the physical world. One thing I tend to do is I tend to try and dress the part. Usually wearing like a black cloak or the my shawl. Like if you scan through my videos, you tend to see like the same two or three outfits every time. And I've just gotten, because it's Halloween, I've just gotten this. Oh yeah. Now, this is not something I would ever walk around in public wearing, but I like having it. So from now on, I think I'm going to put on the hat because it helps me. If you wear it, a costume, you feel like what the character you're dressed as. So if I'm wearing a witch hat, it helps me put myself in that magical mindset of, hey, I'm a witch, right? Now, I'm sure there's like, if I keep doing this and then someone from Reddit will come and maybe see a video and they're going to be like, oh, they don't know what they're doing, right? That's just their mentality. Whatever works for you. For me, this helps put me in a magical mindset. This helps put me in a magical mindset. Wearing a necklace with a crystal on it helps me put myself in that magical mindset. The decor, I have my sort of makeshift altar here, so I'm ready. You don't have to. I mean, if you're really good at meditating, that you could put yourself in alpha state in a crowded room, then and as long as you don't mind ignoring other people and no one's trying to talk to you, you don't have to. But I like this approach of getting into that mindset of, okay, we're about to do some magic. It's kind of like a trigger, the same way that I would do a hand gesture to help get into an altered state of consciousness. These physical things also help trigger that sort of mindset, help put me in that headspace to do magic. Now, speaking of magic, I find that there's, no matter what school or books you're reading, or who your favorite author is, or YouTube, or whoever you're learning magic from, I find there's kind of two schools of thought about this. One is to have a very specific intention, a specific outcome in mind, and specific steps to perform your spell. Another approach is to have an outcome in mind, but to keep it loose and not think so much about all the steps in between. I tend to lean more towards that side, and I'll tell you why. The more specific approach, if you've seen my video, like where I do a book review for the intermediate, I talk about the book, The Elements of Spellcraft, which there are a lot of things in there I agree with, and then there are some things I don't quite agree with. One thing that it talks about is macro and micro enchantments. So you do A macro enchantment is the overall what you want to accomplish. Like, oh, I want a job that pays this much money a year working, I don't know, a doctor, right? The micro enchantments would be okay, now you do another little spell for applying for the jobs. Now you do another little spell for writing your resume. Now you do another little spell for the cover letter, a spell going into the interview, all those little things. My issue with that is well, there's two things. The more specific you get, the more disappointed you're gonna be when it doesn't work. Um, okay, I perform a spell to get a brand new Ford F-150 by October 29th at 3 p.m. And then October 29th comes around, it's 3 p.m., and I don't have this new truck. I'm going to feel pretty disappointed. Um, and then with the micro enchantments, I have to question, did the magic work? Or did you just do it all yourself? You applied for the job, you did the interview, you did all those things. Could you really, if you accomplished it, could you really say it was the magic, or is it just you because you took all those steps? I prefer the more have the outcome in mind, perform your ritual, and then just sort of let the magic happen. I like that way better. Um, and it's talked about. One book I didn't recommend was The Inner Temple of Witchcraft by Christopher Pensack. And I didn't recommend it. I like it. I didn't recommend it because I found that Psychic Witch and The Inner Temple were very, very similar books. And I lean more towards the Psychic Witch. So I figured, well, I mean, why recommend two books that are pretty much the same? Although Christopher Pensack does have an entire series, and I'm working my way through the second book, The Outer Temple of Witchcraft. They're a bit bigger, lots of exercises, highly recommend it. Um, and it does talk a lot about that approach to magic, where you have the outcome in mind, perform your magic, let the magic happen on its own. Because depending on how you believe it works, like whether you believe it's the god or goddess performing your magic, whether you believe it's the great spirit, whether you believe it's the energy, um, give it more options to work. If you're being very, very specific, it's very limiting in terms of how it can achieve what it wants to achieve. Uh, and one of the things I agree with in the elements of spellcraft is that magic is a rhizome. It it's going to find the path of least resistance. When people ask me like, "Oh, you can do a like, what's a spell?" I kind of describe it as like a concentrated form of the law of attraction, and it works a lot like the game Plinko on The Price is Right. Right? If you've never seen it, it's a game where contestants stand at the top, their prizes listed at the bottom. Most of them are duds. You want the new car. They drop a disc or a ball, and there's all these little pegs in the way, and it sort of goes down and it lands. You want the new car, it lands somewhere else, right? That's kind of how magic works. It's going to find the path of least resistance. The more specific you are, the more disappointed you're going to be because you're like, I did everything. I followed the steps. I did all these little enchantments along the way. I didn't get what I wanted. Well, you're kind of limiting how the energy is going to work, how it's going to, you're shutting off all these little paths for it to move. And in my personal experience, I tried it that way. I was disappointed. I try it the other way where you just have the outcome you want in mind, not too specific, and let the magic find its way there. My personal experience, I think that way works better. Um, I can see how that may backfire. The Elements of Spellcraft tells the story of a woman who wanted to work with cats. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She did a spell to work with cats, and she wound up getting a job at Giant Tiger, a big cat on the logo. Not quite what she wanted. So that was the thinking behind let's try and be more specific. The way I see it, magic sort of works through synchronicity. I would, even before I got into this stuff, I always tend to notice little coincidences, and I called it divine synchronicity, where things just sort of seem to happen that were more than just coincidence and seem to happen for a reason. And intuition was telling me that this is something here. Let the synchronicities happen. Let it flow freely, right? What kind of outcome could you have in mind? A lot of people tend to. What are the most common spells people ask for? More money, love spells, maybe a curse or something. Money's a big popular one. Okay, why do you want the money, right? Because thinking about just having more money is kind of limited, right? What's the magic going to do? Make you win the lottery? It's unlikely. But what do you want that money for? Do you want it for a trip? Okay, maybe now you've given the magic a few more paths to choose from. There are several ways that can work for you in that way. You can win a trip. You can. I'm thinking of like, oh, maybe you get sent on a conference from at your job. A conference comes up, right? Maybe there's someone gifts you a trip. There are more options that way instead of just saying more money, right? Well, if you do a spell for more money, you walk out of your house the next day, you find $20 on the ground. Spell worked, you got more money, but it's not exactly what you wanted, right? So think clearly about the outcome you want to achieve, then perform your magic, then let it happen, right? At that point, a lot of agreement, no matter which school of thought you're approaching, both of them tend to agree that you should follow it up with some sort of action. Uh, if you want that job working with cats, apply for jobs working with cats, right? Makes sense. I was going to say something. What was I going to say? I had something. Oh, another thing about following up with action is be aware, be open to the opportunities that are being presented, right? If an opportunity comes your way, seize it. Don't be scared. Don't chicken out. That opportunity has been presented to you for a reason. Follow it. That's how I got here. Is there anything else I can say about that? Divine synchronicity, be open. Most importantly, no matter what tools you're using, like I remember I have this big book, the encyclopedia of like 10,000, so many thousand spells. All of them call for specific ingredients. You don't necessarily need the tools and the ingredients because at the same time everything's made out of energy. If you really want that tool and you don't have it, you can ask for the spirit of Mandrake, right? If you really need it for that spell. The most important thing is the intention. Have that clear, defined intention. Be sure this is what you really want. Do you want more money or do you want that trip to the Bahamas? Okay? Have that clear intention. Another thing people tend to disagree on is the rule of three. That if you're doing some sort of harmful magic or a curse, it can come back on you threefold. I've learned the hard way. Yeah, I believe in that for sure. Uh, I performed a spell months ago, and it wasn't exactly in line with true will. my intention was a little, I was being dishonest with myself, and it backfired. And I remember performing the spell, and then I had a dream where three snakes came out and bit me, and I thought, that was weird. What did that mean? I don't know. And then something happened where I lost like three friends. They just ghosted me, kind of thing. I was like, I don't want to get into personal drama, but be very careful about your intention. Do some meditation, get in touch with your higher will, make sure that this is right for you and that you want it for the right reasons, and that you don't have any hidden agenda that you're hiding from yourself, right? Subconsciously, why do you want this thing that you want, right? Is it you want to get back with your ex-lover? Well, why? Is it because they're really the right person for you, or is it because you just don't want to be alone? So be very careful. That X lever has their own path. If you try and do a spell that's going to try and prevent them from going on their own path, it's going to bite you in the butt times three. I believe that because I learned that the hard way. Anything else about magic that we can talk about? I think that's pretty much it. Get into a magical mindset, create your little sacred space, have that clear outcome in mind with a clear intention. Maybe do some divination beforehand. I had a customer once who asked me, can I do a love spell for them? And I always check first whether it's with tarot or the spirit board. Um, Pendulum, I find, is hit or miss sometimes to see, is this spell going to work? Because if it's not in line with true will, it's not going to work. And I said, let me check. And I do a little thing, and I'm like, apparently this spell's not going to work. How come? I don't know. Let me check. Did some tarot, did some little divination. I don't remember specifically what I did. It just says it's not going to work. And then, and then the customer was like, is he cheating on me? Let me check. So, why did you want that love spell? You didn't want your relationship to fall apart, but the truth is that relationship was already doomed. Doing a love spell is not going to help in that case. Speaking of love spells, I find they're more like, it's not quite about getting a person who's never going to like you to suddenly hypnotize them and make them love you. I find they're better at just enhancing what you already have, right? If you're a couple, you do maybe a love spell, and then what happens is you have a nice romantic evening. Maybe your partner opens up and shares a secret. Your intimacy grows. That's typically how love spells tend to work out most of the time. People have this idea in their head of this is how it works because Hollywood taught me that. Not quite. And then best love spells are self-love, right? Curses, be very careful because that rule of three. I typically haven't performed a single curse for a customer because it was not in the best interests. They should only be done with the idea of justice in mind, not harm. Justice, right? If someone has harmed you and you want some justice, then you can consider that curse. But do some divination beforehand, okay? Always, why waste your time on a spell that's not going to work? Do some divination, no matter what your approach is. Check in, see if it's going to work first. See if it has the potential to work. Then do your ritual, your spell, however. Some people say, then after that, let it go, forget about it. That's impossible because I find that kind of a contradiction because you have this intention, you have this desire. If you can let it go, was your desire really that strong in the first place? I don't know. I'm a little undecided on the let it go part of it. I don't think I've ever actually let any spell go, and they do tend to work still. Some do, some don't, right? The ones that do are in line with higher will, and the ones that don't, I can usually pinpoint as to why it didn't upon reflection, some shadow work, this or that. So that's my little blurb, my little spiel about magic and how it works. And my personal experience may not be what your personal experience is, so you can feel free to disagree with me because I disagree with some authors. Thank you very much. And I think from here on out that this should be the format I approach my videos with. Because I remember I started these videos, one of the reasons was because so many videos aren't very helpful. So let me see if I can make mine helpful instead of just documenting. I mean, you see me talk to a spirit, you see me talk to a million of them, right? You've seen one of those videos, you've seen them all, right? They're not entirely helpful, right? So I think my approach is going to be more instruction based going forward. The only problem I see with that off the top of my head is there's only so many things to teach. After that, uh, we'll see. All right. Have a good day.